Good morning and welcome to Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion with me, Pastor Amanda. It's Monday morning and we are looking at chapter 7 of Genesis. And so we find that it's time for the flood. That's what it's time for. And what happens though is, if you remember on Friday, it says that the animals went into the ark two by two. Like that's what they were at. Noah was supposed to get two of every animal and put them in the ark. Well, today we have a different numbering, and it says that there are to be 7 pairs of clean animals and 1 pair of unclean animals. And so we all of a sudden are seeing this variation of stories. And it reminds us that when Genesis was put together, so to speak, it had been a spoken story for probably 1,000 more years before it was ever written down. And what has happened is there's 2 groups of people, and we call them we have the priestly group of people and we have the Yahwist group, and we call them the P source and the J source. And so we're putting both of those stories together next to each other so that there's just kind of an awareness. There's multiple people telling this story. It's not just one person, but it's 2 different groups of people, and they're just kind of putting their stories alongside each other. And so today it's actually 7 pairs of animals that are clean and 1 pair of the unclean. And they're hopping on to the ark as we go. And chapter 7 is really just a repetition. It repeats itself about 3 times as to what's happening, about putting the animals on the ark, about Noah getting on the ark. Okay, let's talk about the animals getting on the ark again. And then, because what the authors are trying to do at this point is to remind us that the focus of the story is about God's salvation. Yes, there is this destruction that's going to happen, but the most important part is look at what's being saved. And so there's this sense of when we're in the middle of difficult times, maybe like COVID or something, instead of always seeing the destruction that's happening around us, how are we seeing where God is saving? How is God doing, God's healing work? Can we put our focus on that instead? And that's what this chapter kind of shows us, is where is our focus in the midst of difficulty and the midst of hardship? And so that's why it's kind of like it's just repeating. Look what's being saved. Look what's happening here. And then there's also this kind of reminder here, and it's more of a sidebar today because that's what happens. It's just that repetition this week. But so we have this image of water as a destruction source, as something that is able to wipe out the earth. But at the same time, as we continue to read our scripture, we'll notice that water also has the ability to save. Jonah, we kind of get the both and. So they throw him into the ocean to kind of save themselves, but then he's saved from the sea in that sense. We think about our baptism and where water becomes the cleansing of us, and it's our introduction into Christ's life. We're being saved through water. And so we recognize that water has this ability to destroy and to save. If you think about it, our bodies are made up of mostly water, and we have to have water more than food if we got stuck in the desert or something. We have to understand the saving power that is also within it. And I think it's that balance we always need to be aware of that exists, that what can be good can also have evil, and evil can sometimes turn to good. And as human beings, we get to be a part of that. We experience both of that. And that kind of gives me hope and joy in many ways, of recognizing that it's there, it's our choice of what are we going to see? What are we going to focus on? The good in ourselves or the bad in ourselves? And what are we going to put into the world? More good or bad? And so, that's today's kind of a short chapter. But I hope you got maybe a tidbit or two about that. And I hope you're focusing on all that is good and that God is doing wonderful things in your life right now. So until tomorrow, have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me with Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion.